You're listening to the Fightin' Farmer podcast, and I'm Spence, the Fightin' Farmer, and this is episode number 7. Mr. Badger, how you doing?
Hey, Spence, I'm doing well. It's the end of January already. I can't believe it. So time is flying. How are you doing?
I'm recovering from many a thing, and most notably the APPPA conference that we just finished up. I led the conference. I kind of emceed it, and I did it in the comfort of a boot. One of those ones that when you hurt your foot, because we had all that cold snap weather, and I was trying to water the hogs, and I was in a hurry, and all of our water lines and stuff were frozen up. So out of the back of the truck, a 55-gallon drum full of water filled landed on my foot in muck boots. So that kind of... I don't know how it didn't just like break my foot in two. We thought it was broken, and then the doctor thought, well, there was some ligament damage, and nope, it was. I went back a second time after some of the swelling had died after about 10 days, and they were just like, it's kind of a minor miracle. I've got a black and blue foot, but let's see, I was able to put my shoe back on.
Oh, nice.
Get my first, yeah. So that's been new since the conference that was last week. And, now that the weather's like in the 40s, 50s, when it was wind chill -4, I was out there in a sock and trying to hand water chickens, and I'd get my sock wet and it'd be frozen. So it was a lot of fun. We finished up our 4th grade basketball, as big of a page turner as that is. And we went 13-0 and won the league championship. That championship week, my wife was gone and all my kids were sick, my kids, and then the 7 kids on my team. And, some games we only had 5 kids, and there was kids puking on the sideline and having to go back into play and all kinds of crazy stuff. And it was epic, but I'm glad it's over. January's been a good one. Carla and I were talking the other day. We're just like, man, I am so glad January 2018 is over. So let's talk about that conference. Yeah, we had like over 130 people sign up, and I'm not sure how many came, and 18 states, 2 provinces. So I think the winner in the distance was the farmers from British Columbia, right?
Yeah, Tamara Smith. Yeah, and she actually, Tamara, did our program guide design. So
oh, really?
Yeah.
We saw the Shields there from Florida, and Joel Saladin made it from Virginia, and Will Harris and from, let's see, he's in Georgia, yeah, near Valdosta, I think. And some of the guys from Pastured and Alexander Egg, those are 2 big farms. All these guys are kind of bigger farms out in California. So that was pretty neat. Paul will be on. He just joined our board. He's from Pastured. He's a Marine vet. And you did a nice interview with him on your podcast, Pastured Poultry Talk. He's kind of a cool guy. They run about 200,000, I think, out on pasture a year. So a really neat farm out there in California. And got to meet his brother, Jeff, who kind of handles all the a good share of the production. And so, man, it was a great conference. I think Mr. Saladin seemed to be having fun and just a lot of laughter. And, you did a lot of the logistical work. And so good job on that. Any feedback that you've received that's kind of stuck out?
First of all, let me just say that I thought the whole 2 days went very, very well. It was moderated well. You kept the pace moving. It was really a joy. There's a lot of positive feedback coming back our way on this, and people just love the format, which is basically that town hall style format, the open question and answer peer-to-peer thing. And, it's really funny, Spence, is I make it a point, and it's kind of like a stubborn streak of mine is, when I see the people rolling in for registrations, I could very easily leverage, like, oh, Joel Salatin just registered today, or Will Harris just registered today. But I don't do that. Because I want the people that come there to be invested in the format and in the conference. And so some people were quite surprised at the kind of people and producers that were in attendance. And that's one of the very cool things is everybody was just a farmer, talking pastured poultry and marketing and business, and really well received.
That was kind of the goal. We, for folks, this is your little look behind the scene, the board, we worked a lot, and I know you and I spent a lot of time. And you lost whatever little hair you had left, I'm sure. my beard's a little patchier now. But man, it was a lot went into that. And it was kind of one of these things where how do you run a conference of 130 people? Because we thought, last year it was like around 50 and it went really well. And we kind of this open format. And Pat, I think McNiff from Rhode Island, he's a board member and runs Pat's Pastured up in Little Rhodey. And he was, I think he's the one that proposed this format that we did. It was either going to be awesome or it was going to just fail spectacularly and be the last one we did. And so it, as many things in my life seem to, they take that route. And yeah, it worked out spectacularly. And I didn't think we could get 130 people and in there. But it was just like one big conversation, I completely agree with you how it's just farmers being farmers. I think I saw one picture being taken with Joel Saladin the entire time, and that to me, that was a big thing. Joel, he emailed me afterwards, and I know you've talked to him too. And when you've been doing it that long, and there's a lot of celebrity, if you can be a celebrity farmer, I think I was really hoping that it would be something that where it could be just peer to peer, Mr. Saladin was taking notes and, like people, I took notes, I learned things. And that was kind of one of the things I challenged people at the very first was like, there's that one thing there's at least one thing on my farm. There's multiple things on your farm that kind of like they're your most costly issues you're dealing with now, they're the elephants in the room and someone in here has figured it out. And so your job is to find the solution for that problem that dwarfs the cost of attending this conference,
Right.
And so, I felt like we made some significant dents in those. Like for us, I guess two of the top lessons for me or takeaways. One of them was just books, right? So we run QuickBooks for a farm and our farm is severely understaffed right now. It's just me. And Carla does the books. She's got all the training and she's really good at it. She's really detailed oriented and she does all the expense side and the reconciliation. Well, that's kind of devolved into once a year, when taxes are due, we get an extension. And then that June afterwards, she hates me for 2 weeks as she just pulls all-nighters getting all the taxes done. It's gotten better. Our systems have gotten better, but the farm just continues to get more and more complex. And she works just as hard as I do with her job, off-farm job and the kids. And we're both run ragged. And so it's like, this is one more thing on her. And it's that balance of, because I still want her to be involved because it's her farm too, And so we had one of my feed processing customers from Oklahoma, Chad, we were going, let me take a step back in the conference, we were going to go tour our processing plant, right? Like that was one of the activities that we had planned. And we'll talk about that here in a second. So I knew we were going out there and it was the end of January, which meant that I needed to get a W-9 from Scott, my business partner, for the service he did of processing. Anytime someone does over $600 worth of service, as a business, I have to get a W-9 from them. It has like their EIN and their name, and signature. It's pretty basic tax form. And then I've got to turn around and I've got to file a 1099 and send it to them, and then include that with my taxes so that way they can't fly under the government radar or whatever. And if I don't get that out by January 31st, it's a $600 fine for each one. So I saw some of my processing customers there that I knew had done over $600, and I went to one of them and I went, "Hey, when you go out to the processing plant, Scott's going to have my my W-9, and you need to get W-9s." And Chad, he apparently works for H&R Block on the side, so he was like, "Awesome, that was on my checklist." And the other person was like, "Do what?" He put his hand on it and went, "Don't worry, I was going to get it for you," because Chad is kind of doing this thing where he's starting to do some accounting for other farms, and in the end, so we got to talking, and he's doing that. It's like, "Hey man, I think I want to be your second customer. I'll kill your chickens and you help me keep my books straight and my wife happy. And, we're going to get that set up, but just with the expenses, because I do all the invoicing and that works out really well because I do all the, the schmoozing with chefs and troubleshooting and that kind of stuff. And so I went and told Carla and she was like, that would be awesome. Best husband ever, Taxes may switch me from being the worst husband ever, and being the focus of her ire once a year to the best husband ever. She thinks of how awesome her husband is for jumping on that grenade for her and finding a way out. So that was one of the cool things that we got out of it. And then also, just even asking about employees, that's something we've kind of struggled to find just a really good fit. One of the things that from the conference that I took was Mr. Saladin and other folks were talking about like, hey, you should never pay hourly to a farm employee. And that's one of the problems we've seen. It's like it should be salary, because job gets done, I went on Eager Farmer and we put up a salaried position for a pastured poultry production manager. I got that up today, put it on social media. I've already had a call about it. It's been shared by like the Arkansas Young Farmers Coalition. And so I know we've seen our ads getting a lot of good eyeballs, some of the target audiences picking up off that and hearing some of the other advice for people that it felt like they've pulled out, they've got a good grasp on running farm employees. That was a big deal for us. Was there anything that jumped out for you?
Sometimes you just hear things in a different way that you already know and it kind of resonates, but it hits the crowd too in a way that they should have known and they realize it. And what I'm talking about is the last day we were talking about marketing. That conversation was preceded by this idea of standards or labels or certifications or whatever you want to call it. Then that was followed up by marketing. And one of the conversations was, look, man, you're talking about all these labels and and certifications and stuff, but nobody still even knows who you are.
You being APPPA, right?
Yeah. Or pastured poultry even in general, And I think that was reflected in that we had 1 million broilers represented, and 1 million sounds like a lot, and it is a lot for any one person, but man, in the scope of what we consume in the United States per capita, that's we're not even a full percentage point of that.
Right.
There's work to be done and it's marketing work, right? It's that business marketing and selling work that we need to put a lot of focus onto. And that's a tough nut to crack because I think everybody knows it. It's just hard for some people and they like to raise the chickens and kill the chickens and eat the chicken. But selling it is the is the part where people get the heebie-jeebies. So that's our challenge.
Yeah, and I thought too, like we really kind of turned at town hall, and if you weren't there, well, you missed out on what the membership kind of decided the direction the organization wanted to go, and so that was pretty cool. Like we kind of came up with some deliverables, and the board and you, and as the executive director, and I will. We'll sit down and we'll attack some of those, and some of them address those marketing, and you'll just have to wait and see. You should have been there. Yeah, I thought it was really cool, all that stuff. And I something that kind of shocked me was how well attended. We did a plant tour in our building. Mr. Badger, you were like, we'll get like 30 people there. We had, I don't know how many folks we had there. It had to have been pushing 100. I thought we'd get 50, so I was like kind of erring on your side. And some other people were like, what if everybody comes? There's not going to be enough room. And I know I was like, nah, we'll make it work. And we did, but man, it was pretty crazy.
Yeah.
Getting all those folks crammed in. And of course it was like, super windy and 30 degrees outside and, wind chill below freezing. So for the people that couldn't fit in, but it seemed like people really enjoyed it. I, for one, love going and seeing people's processing plants, especially more so now that I have mine. But I think there's so many we targeted to have, like, this was like a producers conference. There weren't many people that had never grown chickens or that had 5 Miss Fluffy butts. Yeah, and none of those people monopolized the conversation, which was kind of one of our fears, right? So it was like producers, mostly really large scale producers, or what would qualify as large scale producers, in our industry. And, man, I just, people like seeing processing plants, and I've heard from quite a few. I've gotten emails from other people that have USDA inspected plants with specific questions. And then a lot of it's around the dog food, which was an interesting takeaway. And then the other thing, and I've got questions from people that are looking to start plants or equipment. And those are the kind of things you go to this. And I heard from someone who saw like, man, after seeing that, I think we could do that, and we warned them of all the other things that came behind with that, but with plant sightings and, and all that jazz. But sometimes for me, like, that's why I want to go out and I want to see like Paul's and Jeff's operation out there, Pastured. Like, I'd love to go see that just to kind of expand my mind, to see like what's possible. What does it look like, the management? Because an entity changes, going from 1,000 chicken farm that sells maybe at the farmer's market, makes pretty good supplemental income, to a 15,000 bird farm, which is kind of where we're at a year with our own little processing plant, to, what's that look like in a couple years? Will it be 20,000 or 30,000? Well, that's going to necessitate a whole different, like, the farm will just look different, different brooder strategies and different, delivery vans, and, there's things change and you have to bring people on, and that's a skill, managing and finding the right person. I really enjoy getting to see guys that have kind of broke some of that ground or that have figured out different aspects. You and I talked about, there's people in our community that maybe they don't grow the best, but they're awesome at processing. And there's people that, that grow that are like the gurus of raising chickens, but they can't market. And then there's gurus at marketing, but they struggle to raise chickens. And so to get all those people together in one room, it's like all the pieces that were there for this super awesome world's best pastured poultry farm, but the problem was there were 130 of them and we had to stitch them all together. And I think we did a pretty good job.
We set a high bar for 2019. Let's see if we clear it.
We also, one of the things, and I'll kind of end on this, is, so one of the things that kind of got me excited was hearing Joel Saladin. He talked about, one of the things we talked about was just research and partnering with scientific institutions. Was that something that we thought was interesting? Because, I come from kind of that background and have worked with researchers and done research on the farm, blah, blah, blah. And some other folks don't like dealing with researchers. So, and we really didn't know. So we kind of had a great opportunity to poll the APPPA membership. But yeah, we, Mr. Saladin was talking, they just finished up the Smithsonian Institute doing all these inventories, like taxonomic inventories and studies of like spider populations and plant diversity and bird counts and stuff on his farm versus farms that haven't had poultry in that, and it was an explosion, which is what, you and I would know, that, there's a regenerative aspect to doing poultry like this. And in my neck of the woods, poultry manure, we're actually in a nutrient surplus area where you can't bring poultry manure into our county as fertilizer. It can only be applied or go out if it's produced if it's produced in the county, because it's all these lawsuits and it's so destructive. So, man, I'm looking forward to geeking out when that paper comes out. I used to be an aquatic taxonomist for like invertebrates, so like critters without spines, so crayfish and all the insects and dragonfly larvae and beetles and mayflies and caddisflies, blah, 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 blah. And then fish and that kind of stuff. So, and know a lot about plants and can run keys on all that. So, man, I'm really looking forward to tearing into that thing. And I think there's some potential for marketing there, just how we can actually enrich the ecological systems and wildlife around us, So all through the power of the chicken.
and just real quick, I'll jump in there, Spence. One of the other studies that Polyface did was they looked at salmonella sampling on their farm compared to one of their new rental farms that they brought on that hadn't had any poultry or any animals on it for like decades, I think Joel said. So it was a long time. And basically the soil test came back pretty much the same. There's no difference in the amount of that salmonella bacteria in the polyphase farm which has chickens on it versus the one that didn't. That's an awesome study too, I think, to get our hands on and share, because that's good information.
It's awesome because, like, and we know, I know that you've written some articles, and there's a scientist, like the USDA's top scientist a year ago, like there's like 17 or 24 species of salmonella that are pertinent in food safety, like with poultry,
right.
Selling poultry, and like only a few of them make people sick. So, you throw that into like running chickens over pasture, doesn't really make it for a long period of time, doesn't make that soil, it's not like saturated with salmonella, and what's there is probably not even the bad stuff, and no different than if you were just go walk into a field that hasn't had chickens on it. Like on one side, it's awesome that our knowledge base on like how all this works, the science, it is expanding rapidly, right?
Right.
But then you look at the government and you're like, because it's like we're learning all this stuff, and all these hunches we've had are being confirmed, and then you're like, oh yeah, the government, the ones that regulate it and make our, that can squash us, like they don't care, they're still telling us to wash eggs because that's bad science from the 30s. Yeah, so things are kind of rolling around, and so jazzed up about the APPPA conference and ready to put January 2018 in the books and not be sick or drop barrels on my food anymore. So we're ready to go. Hey, one last thing. I had a question come in from a guy at the conference, and I thought it'd be good to kind of get some practical chicken stuff. So I figured we'd do that. It was John McCabe. How do you say his name? You know who he is.
I think it's John McCabe is how I would say
McCabe.
it. Yeah.
There you go. It's like a double C, and I don't know how to handle that. I'm Polish, man. We don't have that. We got all kinds of other consonants, but not that little C, big C. Essentially, John, he was at the conference, and he apologized for not stepping up. But he sent me this email, and so I figure this is quicker than me typing an email out, and folks will get some stuff. So he's looking at potentially switching feeds to Highland, who is who we have, and so his kind of backstory is he's feeding a non-GMO ration, which is what we do. He's running Cornish cross, kind of similar how we do. And he's up in Northwest Michigan, got kind of a short season, as you'd expect. And he's running a 21%, which usually we would call a chick starter, all the way through on his birds. He's feeding about 17 pounds, and takes him about 8 weeks, and he's getting on average dressed like a finished whole chicken. We call that a finished carcass weight or carcass weight. He's getting about 4.8 pounds. He's, everything's going good. And so he's wanting to he's thinking maybe he can switch his feed, do a little bit better, but the Highland stuff is more expensive. And so it's going to add about 85 cents the cost of each bird. And that's significant,
Right.
So he says at his current scale, that's going to equate to $5,000, about $5,500. So he's trucking through some birds. So what he didn't know was if switching over would be worth it, would it be more efficient? And, and then he's got some questions. He says, do you begin with a chick starter and switch to a grower? And a grower, so a chick starter would be a 21% protein, and then it's got some other mineral bumps, and then a grower would be a 19%. He's like, do you run straight run? And if you're not a chicken person, that means males and females, like when you get them from the hatchery, or just cockerels, which are the males. What's your average carcass weight? How many pounds of feed do you budget to get birds to the desired slaughter weight? And do you process at 6 weeks, 7 weeks, 8 weeks, or other? Do we think that it makes good financial sense to go with Highland versus the Amish? I thought it was just an interesting question, from a grower. I really wish John would have caught me and we could have kind of ran this by 129 people or 128 other people who probably know better than we do. The first thing that jumps out to me is just running a chick starter all the way through. What'd you think of that?
That was one of my first thoughts, and 21% is a little bit overkill for those birds as they go through their grow out. And the other number I'll give you, Spence, is he's got about a 3.5 to 1 feed conversion ratio for his feed to finished carcass weight.
Okay.
So,
yeah. And that, I think I ran the math when I saw this, that comes out to about a 2.98 or so, a 3 to 1 for his, just a regular live bird weight, Yep. And so we don't know if it's neck on. There's a lot of things we don't know. We're just kind of throwing around some generalities. So I guess if we were to kind of rate what we have here and just making some assumptions, it's good, but it's not awesome. His feed conversion. One of the things that I see is in here that I didn't mention is he's doing a feeding schedule produced by Whelp Hatchery. And I know what he's talking about, where it talks about limiting the feeding and stuff for the broilers. Those recommendations come from the conventional poultry industry, right? Because you're trying to deal with heart attacks, especially by feeding that high fuel, that high octane chick starter. One of the things I would imagine is that he's kind of hurting his grow out by he's not at the end of the growth curve. He's not just piling on the pounds onto his birds when, they've got the frame all laid down and they're ready to just slap on some good old quality pasture raised meat, because he's probably withholding feed from the birds. When they're older, I just let them, as much as they can eat up, I let them go. And the goal is to kind of the next morning have about 5 to 10% left in the feeder of what you're feeding them. Anything more, they're probably not eating all the minerals. They're at the end if you got a good chick feed, it has texture, there's different size pieces, there's different size grains and all that. And the birds will kind of sift through. The broilers just kind of gobble it down. But if there's too much, if you keep too much feed in them, eventually they'll just start picking out the corns and all the tasty bits, and they won't get all the vitamins and the fish meal and the good stuff. So that would kind of be one thing I think that's hurting them. Running that high percent, I'm always worried, especially in folks in northern climates, especially at the start of the season. That 21% I feel really does set you up for ascites, which he's probably defusing that situation by not putting as much feed into him, which is hurting his feed consumption. So I'd put him on full feed all the time on a 19%, and that might get his costs down. I don't know what he priced out for the Highland stuff. Highland's a great company, but there's lots of people that can make good feed, and some of it is distance, right? If he's getting it from a local farm, a local Amish feed mill, so the price is probably just cheaper on shipping. We run that grower straight through, straight run or cockerels. I run. This is how we do it. I get chicks in every 2 weeks, and they're straight run, so males and females. The males grow. They're jerks and they're not gentlemen, and they kind of knock the females around, and so the males tend to grow bigger, and we pull them out. A lot of it depends on what size of bird I'm needing. So if I need really big birds, if I'm running low on those for a lot of my restaurants, or if I need grind, I may take them 9-10 weeks if I need grind and get 3 pounds of sausage bone out on them. So we're kind of all over the place, but generally I like to take the males out first 1 week and then come back and take the females, as I catch up. And that kind of lets the females get caught up, gives them another week, and gets the males out. So, and that way I get 2 weeks worth of slaughter, but I'm only brooding once. So that's how I do it. If you just get all cockerels, all boys, it costs more usually. The average carcass weight, who knows? Just depends on when we're slaughtering them and what we need. I'm pretty happy with, we grow pretty efficiently. Last time I checked, it was somewhere probably around 2.5. When I'm out on the farm or a real good farm manager, farmhand, we keep it around that 2 to 1, which is about what the industry gets. So that's really good. Like by industry, I mean conventional. And then, we just process. We don't have a set time. We don't have a set budget of feed. We don't have a set day that we process other than we process every week. We take what we need. But yeah, so, and does it make good financial sense to switch with Highland versus his current feed? I love Highland feed. I can't say. Can you?
I've not actually used Highland feed. I was just thinking, listening to you talk a year ago, maybe a year and a half ago, we published an article in the APPPA Grit, written by Ginger Shields, where they did a comparison of Highlands feeds versus a cheaper feed that was least cost rationed, which means, the recipe and ingredients kind of change with the prices, the commodity prices. Right. So it's not always the same. And what they found was better feed conversion and higher carcass yield. So the more expensive feed, and in the end, returned a more profitable product. There was more there with and less cost to produce a pound.
Also, John, if you're listening, and I'm going to tell you to listen because I'm not going to write you on an email. So one thing Highland does do, at least for us, is they give me a 5% discount for being a military vet. So, hey, John, that may be your ticket if you were, in one of the branches. Even the Coast Guard, man, even the Coasties count. So if not, you just got to roll. Sometimes you got to check it out. I would actually see if Jeff Maddox and Furtrell, they do a lot of they do all the formulations. So if he could get a copy of what he's using at the Amish feed mill and then check with, maybe get in touch with Jeff, since Jeff, since we're all APPPA, he should have talked to Jeff at the conference. But I think that Jeff would probably be able to tell him better than we could. And, especially if they're not using Furtrell, Furtrell is the company that makes our mineral mix for Highland, and that would be something that I would do. But I definitely think, given my experience with Highland, I think there's a lot of value to considering them. Their feed's been really good the past several years, and I've been very happy with it.
Just the other kind of thing to think about. The reason I looked at the feed conversion is because I know kind of like a good average, a good target for Cornish cross on pasture is 3-to-1. When you're talking about the price of making this switch, the cost of it, there's room there too. So I guess part of the thing to figure out is, are you wasting feed? Are the birds wasting feed, or is there something else in the management, or is it the feed that you could squeeze another, get that 3.5 down to 3, or even a quarter of a pound? There's some fine tuning there, and there's not a lot of room. 3.5 to 1 is not bad. It's very competitive with a lot of people, but 3-to-1 is possible. 2.5 to 1 is like rocking. And all of that's possible. We published the feeding trials to do it, and I know people out there are hitting really, really awesome numbers on pasture. So a lot of different places to pick up those few cents in price difference, I think.
Yeah. And then there's also just something to be said for, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. And the other thing is, sometimes a local mill like that, you pull your business from them and they go a different direction. That route may not be there if you decide in 6 months or in 2020 or 2019 that, hey, we're just going to go back, So lots of things. So that was probably not helpful at all. Short answer is, when you have feed questions, you might want to talk to Jeff. If you're an APPPA member and your feed mill is buying from Furtrell, don't be a scrub looking for info if you are neither of those things from Jeff, because he'll come after me. So I ain't worried. He was Air Force. Anyways, man. So I think that's good. We've got plenty. We've been talking a while about chickens and conference, and don't drop 55-gallon drums of water on your foot on a 18-degree day, and you'll be doing good. So, all right, man. Well, it's good talking to you, Mike, and I hope you take the lessons from the conference and apply them and get some sleep.
Well, I fought for the 188. I packed my bags to meet my fate. And off I went to pay my rent. I've been a patriot since I was 8. So there I was with the old fighter wing, fighting the war no one could see, with 8,000 pounds of bombs and rounds. We'll load it all up as we all sing. Hey ho, here we go, load 'em up and watch 'em go. Hey ho, here we go, load 'em up and watch 'em go. After 12 long months of war, I got home to do my chores. I dream about the war every night. Hey ho, here we go, load 'em up and watch 'em go. Hey ho, here we go, load 'em up and watch 'em go. Invisible wars too much for me. What we need is a conversation, you see, but it'll have to wait, 'cause I got a date. Uncle Sam needs 12 more for me. Hey ho, here we go, load 'em up and watch 'em go. Hey ho, here we go, load 'em up and watch 'em go. Hey ho, here we go, load 'em up and watch 'em go. I said, hey ho, here we go, where they all go, nobody knows.